All right. Good morning, everybody. I am Kate Heald. I am the College and Career Navigator at Bethesda Chevy Chase High School. We have several other CCNs on this call. Every high school in Montgomery County has a College and Career Navigator. So I encourage you to connect with them. They're located in counseling typically. And today we are joined by Katja Kozemka, who is the admissions rep at University of Maryland in College Park. I am now going to turn off my audio and my camera, but if you have any questions, please put them in the chat. Once Katja is finished, if we haven't been able to answer your messages in the chat, then we will feed them to Katja. Thank you. Go ahead.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for coming today and thanks for having me. My name is Katya Kozemka. I am an admissions counselor here at the University of Maryland College Park. I am one of several admissions counselors that helps cover all of Montgomery County and the many, many great students coming from there. So you may be seeing me throughout, the fall if you're a junior or a senior or later in your career as a high school student as you get closer and closer to the college application process. But I probably won't be a stranger. You'll see me around at fairs and at your various high schools and things like that. But today we are going to do a pretty broad sort of coverage of the University of Maryland. I'll talk a little bit about sort of what we have going on at UMD to sort of start things off. And then I'll go a little bit more in depth into the application process itself and what that looks like for students, the kinds of things that we are looking for, and all those things like that. I'm hoping it takes maybe 30-ish minutes or so, maybe a little less, maybe a little more, depending on how in the zone I get, to get through the actual presentation. And then we'll have plenty of time to answer some questions before we wrap things up at noon. If you do have questions, like Kate said, please feel free to put them in the chat as I am presenting. If our wonderful CCNs are not able to answer them, I will address them when I'm finished presenting, or I can take questions at the end as well. But I won't answer questions while I'm going through it, just for the sake of sort of the flow of the presentation. But we'll go ahead and get things started. All right. So if you are completely unfamiliar with the University of Maryland, which I imagine is probably not the case, but I don't want to make any assumptions, this is the big picture. These are the numbers. These are some numbers we've got going on, some rankings, some ratios, all of those sort of things. I'm not going to read out every single thing on the screen right now. You're welcome to read them all yourself. But I think a couple of things I like to highlight are our sort of general student population. I think most people know Maryland is a relatively big school.
They were doing a seminar, a webinar.
Oh, please mute yourself.
The general we are generally a large university. We are the largest public university in the state of Maryland. We are the flagship. So it's 31,000 undergraduate students on our campus, and it is just the one campus. I know that is sometimes confusing to folks who, there's a couple different University of Marylands and things like that, but we are just the College Park campus. So everybody is located here, and that is, we have students from close to all 50 states, if not all 50 states, and over 120 countries. So we are all over the place. That being said, we are a public university. The vast majority of our students are coming from the state of Maryland. 70% of our students are in-state Maryland students that are coming to us from the state in which we are located. Of those, sort of 31,000 students, we have over 100 majors that they are choosing from. Many, many, many more minors they're adding on to those majors. Over 800 student clubs and organizations that our students are participating in, 300 plus study abroad options that our students are taking advantage of, and many, many, many more opportunities throughout our campus for different ways to get involved and you sort of enhance education. We will sort of circle back to a couple of those topics, but broad numbers there for you. You in Montgomery County are hopefully aware of roughly where we are located. As you are also relatively, close to Washington, D.C. as your major city. But there are a couple of things about the University of Maryland and D.C. that I think are important to highlight, and actually plays into my personal favorite thing about the University of Maryland, which has a lot to do with our proximity to D.C. If you have not been to campus, we are inside the DC Beltway and in fact on the DC Metro system. And it's that Metro system piece that I think really plays a role in how we use and are able to take advantage of Washington, DC for our students. And there's a couple ways that this comes in. The most obvious way is, of course, things like internships, right? The internship opportunities for students to be able to take advantage of are right sort of down the road, right? Really easy access. Students don't have to have cars in order to have an internship while they are a student. They are able to take advantage of those internship opportunities during the semester because of our close proximity. And that is sort of the most obvious thing, that a city gives you. But there's a couple of other things that it does as well. Research, off-campus research, while we have a lot of research going on campus that I'll talk about a little bit, there's also opportunities for off-campus research within the DC area itself. The sort of general off-campus activity that is, available at DC, everything from professional sports games to DC Restaurant Week to Porch Fest. There's a whole bunch of, things that are happening in DC that our students like to get involved in. But I think my personal favorite thing, which as I mentioned is related to our proximity to DC, is that our students really have the choice and the best of both worlds situation where our campus and our proximity to a city is concerned. We are a classic suburban campus. If you've not been to us before, we do have the sort of, if you're looking behind me at my background, this is a shot of our campus, right? So there's lots of green spaces. We have the big libraries, the brick buildings. It looks very much like a traditional college campus in all of the ways that you think of, sort of classic colleges and universities. And so you get that experience, right? You have a strong campus feel. There's a good campus community. You have dining halls and residence halls and on-campus sports, and we have a big stadium in the middle of campus and all that sort of stuff, all the big state school feel stuff. We have that access to that. And we have our little college town down Baltimore Avenue. If there's shops and restaurants and all of the sort of things that you could want or need are right here in College Park. You don't ever have to leave. And students come and want that experience. They want to stay on campus all 4 years. They don't really want to explore the larger community. We have students who, might want to explore the larger community in College Park, but maybe not go outside of that. And then, of course, we also have students who want to take advantage of both, right? Have the campus feel, but then also have an internship in the city. And the nice thing is about University of Maryland is that you don't have to choose, or that if your mind changes over the 4 years that you're in college from the time that you're 18 to when you're 21 or 22, which is very normal for your mind to change about things, and that you decide, 3 years in, you want to spend a little bit more time in the city and see what that's like. You do have the opportunity to do so. You're not sort of locked into one type of college experience, which I think is really beneficial. And one of my personal favorite things about the University of Maryland. The other thing that I think sometimes flies under the radar is what our proximity to DC says and does for our faculty. So many of our faculty are, sort of still active in their respective fields. They're still working professionals that are able to, because of our proximity, also teach classes at the University of Maryland. And so that's really beneficial because you are still getting those sorts of active professionals are telling you what's actually going on in their fields. They're actively doing research. They're actively participating in the things that they are teaching you about. And that goes a long way to sort of, networking opportunities and things like that. Or, research and internship opportunities. If your professors are actually working and active in the fields that you are interested in joining, it gives you a really strong perspective of what you're getting yourself into at the end of the day. So that's sort of a highlight of what DC does for us. While I'm sure many of you are familiar with the city, that's sort of the way that it interacts with our campus. All right. On our campus itself, we have 12 schools and colleges. So we have a lot of stuff going on. You'll notice maybe if you're going to count really fast, there are actually 13 things on this screen right now. And I point these out for a couple of reasons. One, they're relatively self-explanatory in terms of we're 31,000 students. We have to break that down in some capacity to make it manageable. And this is how we do it. All of these, except for one of them, but I'll get to that in a second. But our 12 schools and colleges all house our different majors. So that's where your academic advising is held. You might have career services that are related to your school. Some of them also have their own study abroad offices and things like that. But they all have sort of resources. Now, some of them have many, many majors, right? Arts and Humanities has a whole number of majors that, live within the College of Arts and Humanities. Some of them have only one. The College of Journalism, for example, has only the journalism major within it. So they might have a lot of majors, they might have a few majors, but that's sort of where you're sort of centrally housed in terms of advising and things like that while you're at the University of Maryland. I'll talk about this a little bit when we talk about limited enrollment programs and our competitive majors, but it is important to keep in mind that you are not applying into a specific school. You are applying to the university as a whole. So you're not sort of going, okay, I'm applying to the Clark School of Engineering, and that's, sort of that's who's reviewing my application. It's a university-wide application, and I'll talk about that in a minute. But you're not applying to a specific school. You do not need to have a declared major when you come in. It is perfectly fine to come in undecided. We do not consider your intended major when we are reviewing your application. We are what's called major blind, and I'll go through this in a little bit more detail in a few moments. But the major blind process does mean that it does not help or hurt you to have a major or not have a major, or to have one major over another. And the reason there are 13 on this slide when I said there are 12 schools and colleges is because of that bottom corner LTSC right there, which is for letters and sciences. Letters and sciences is not a school or a college. You cannot graduate with a letters and sciences degree, but it is where we house our students for advising if they are undecided. So if you are coming in and you're not quite sure what you want to major in just yet, you will start off with your academic advising in letters and sciences. And they are sort of well equipped. That's kind of the whole purpose of them, is to help you sort of transition into figuring out what you want your major to be. And that might be, based on, okay, what kind of classes you liked in high school, but you don't really know how that translates into a major or into a career. Or maybe you know what kind of career you want to be in, but you're not quite sure what majors are going to get you to that point. Or maybe what you want your career to be and the obvious major don't quite line up with what you're interested in, and you're looking for an alternative. Or maybe you want to do something like a graduate program, like you want to go to med school or you want to go to law school, and you're not sure which undergraduate major you should choose when going on sort of those post-undergrad, post-bac sort of experiences and things like that. Letters and Sciences is designed, they're advising to help you figure that out. And whatever sort of path you're on, whether you have an idea or no idea at all, they have resources from, academic advising meetings to major exploration courses to help you figure out how to put those pieces together into a major that you want to continue on for the rest of your college experience. And so you will go from letters and sciences into one of the other schools and colleges eventually, but that is a place for you to start if you are not quite sure what you want to start with. But as I mentioned, we do have some competitive majors and some things like that, and we're going to talk about them now sort of relatively extensively. Hopefully, I think I've found a way that it makes sense, but if you have questions about it, we'll circle back to it at the end. So you might find throughout this that the University of Maryland loves acronyms. These are our limited enrollment programs. You will often hear us refer to them as LEPs, acronyms. We have, I believe it's 12 of them, if I know how to count. 12 of them that are limited enrollment programs. So these are our competitive majors, and they are competitive in different aspects, and I'll sort of go through them all. But if it is not on the board right now, it is not a competitive major, a limited enrollment program. And those limited enrollment programs are the only ones where you can, for example, be admitted to the university and not be admitted to your major. And I'm going to go through that process sort of like in depth right now and how it works. So hopefully it makes sense as to how that happened in a few moments. But it's important to understand there are two types of limited enrollment programs. There are competitive limited enrollment programs, and there are non-competitive limited enrollment programs. The vast majority of them, 10 of the 12, are non-competitive. The only competitive ones are business and computer science. And that gets confusing because how can it be competitive or non-competitive, but it's limited enrollment? Like, that doesn't really make sense. And I understand that's confusing. We're going to go through it one by one. We're going to use a non-competitive as an example of what this process looks like from start to finish. And I always like to use engineering because it's a very popular non-competitive one. So if you are applying to the University of Maryland and you know you want to major in civil engineering, for example, when you apply and you fill out your application, you can choose an intended major if you have one. In this case, you've put in civil engineering as your intended major on your common application. When my office reviews your application, we receive that application and we're reviewing it, we do not consider that you have put in civil engineering. So we're not looking at that. We're not looking that your coursework or activities or anything is related to that major. We don't even look at that major whatsoever. And that's why we say we are major blind, because we are not considering that major when we are looking at you for admission. We are looking at all the other factors that we consider, and we will get to that, don't worry. And we are deciding whether or not we are going to admit you to the university as a whole. And that's a yes or no question. So if your application gets to us, we're going to say, yes, you're admitted, or no, you are not admitted. If we say, yes, you are admitted to the university at large, then and only then will we look at what your intended major is. So at that point, we've decided you're a great student. We want you on campus. We're going to admit you. We've decided to admit you. We'll take a look at what your intended major is. If it is a limited enrollment program, in this example, civil engineering, we will then pass your application off to that specific school for review into that major. So in this case, we've decided to admit you. You've said you want to major in an engineering major, civil engineering in this case. We're going to send you to the School of Engineering, who will review you for admission to the engineering major. So they can say, yes, we're going to admit the student to engineering, or they can say, no, we are not going to admit the student to engineering. Regardless of whether they say yes or no, by the time they even see your application, we have already decided to admit you, and that does not change if they say no. So that does mean you can be admitted to the university and not be admitted to your major. And I will continue with this to explain non-competitive versus competitive. So engineering is a non-competitive LEP. So that means if we say yes, engineering says no. So you've gotten into the University of Maryland, but you've not gotten into engineering. In this case, you would be admitted into letters and sciences, that undecided sort of pool. That does not mean it is the end of the road where engineering is concerned. Every one of these on the screen has what is called gateway requirement courses, and you can view them on the website that's sort of listed on the screen, lep.umd.edu. That website has all the gateway requirements, but the gateway requirements for each major are different. They are essentially introductory courses to that major. It's somewhere between 2 and 4 classes, depending on the different major, and they will have requirements of minimum grades you need to meet in those. So engineering, this is not an exhaustive list, and don't quote me on this, but it's things, like a calculus class, and you have to take physics, I believe, and I think it's an introductory engineering course. But there's a series of courses you take, and these are courses you take at the University of Maryland, and a minimum grade you need to meet. The minimum grade is different for every class and every major, but it's usually a B or a C. You basically meet that minimum grade, and then there's an overall GPA that you need to maintain. That is also a little bit different. It's usually either a 2.7, or for engineering's case, it's a 3.0. So for engineering, if you've taken the 3 classes, you've gotten the required grade, your overall GPA of every class that you've taken in college is a 3.0 or higher. If you've checked off all of the boxes, because engineering is non-competitive, as long as you've checked the boxes, you are then guaranteed admission into the engineering major. And that's what we mean by non-competitive. So everyone who meets the criteria is admitted to the major. And that's the difference between competitive and not competitive. Because competitive majors, so business and computer science, they have the same criteria, but meeting all the criteria does not guarantee you admission into the major. And that's the difference between competitive and not competitive. So for business, for example, if we did the exact same process, you got into the university but didn't get into business, there's the gateway requirements, all that sort of stuff. In order to be guaranteed the admission into the business school, your overall GPA has to be a 3.6 or higher, and that's quite a jump from a 3.0. Now, for business, if you are below that 3.6, but you meet the 3.0 threshold, you are still eligible to apply to the business school. You're just not guaranteed admission. Computer science is the only one that has no guaranteed admission threshold. So they do not have a GPA where you are guaranteed admission if you meet the gateway requirements. So computer science is our most competitive major by far. If you are interested in that, I would recommend you come chat with me when I'm at your school this fall and get into the nitty-gritty of that. I don't want to spend too much time on it today, but that is our most competitive major by quite some ways. So hopefully that process made sense. And if it didn't, we can talk about it again as I wrap things up if there are any clarifying questions about it. All right, let's move along from that. Some other things that we got going on. I talked about a bunch of these things in various capacities, but we are a tier 1 research institution. So a lot of opportunities to get research. We have some first year research experiences called fire and biofire programs that students can be invited to join freshman year to be involved in research, but opportunities throughout your undergraduate experience to get involved in on-campus research and the millions of dollars that we are spending on that on our campus. I mentioned internships and the opportunity to do so in DC, obviously, but not exclusively. We have students at DC that intern in Annapolis and in Baltimore and all throughout the state and the country and internationally. Education abroad, I mentioned we have over 300 programs. Of course, the most popular programs are things like semester-long experiences, which is your traditional study abroad. But we have a variety of other experiences. I've just mentioned you can do an internship abroad. There are opportunities to do winter and summer terms or alternative breaks or lots of different types of experiences depending on what you are interested in your study abroad experience. We have service learning courses as well. So if you're interested in the service aspect, if you've been doing a lot of that in high school and you want to continue doing it, there are classes you can take that involve service components in our sort of College Park and Prince George's County area, but in DC or also in larger sort of areas throughout the US. So lots of stuff, sort of community-based things like that. And then we do have residential communities, living learning communities as well. The things that you will think of the most or that you might be most familiar with, things like our Honors College is a living and learning community. Our College Park Scholars Program is a living learning community. And then we have several others that are have different topics and things like that. I'll talk a little bit about these, but the most important thing to keep in mind where these living learning communities or the FIRE programs, all these sort of first year programs, they are all invitation based. You do not apply to any of them. So when you apply to the university, as long as you apply early action, and we'll get to that in a second, you are automatically considered for invitation to these. So you don't have to fill out any extra essays or check any boxes or anything like that. All students who apply early action are considered for invitation to these programs. All right. I mentioned student organizations earlier, but I think it is worth talking about again because of the way that our campus is so involved in student organizations. What you're looking at on this slide here, this picture, the bottom, obviously it's someone doing a flip, but the bottom of that screen is, you can see it's a lot of people, it's a lot of busyness. That is our student organization fair. That happens the first Friday of the semester. Or I guess it's the second Friday if you move in on a Friday, but the first Friday of the semester after classes start is this student organization fair where all 800 of them line up and have a table set up on the McKeldin Mall, which is a huge outdoor space in front of our library. And there are a lot of opportunities for you to walk out, check around what people got going on, what you might be interested in joining, whether it's something you're continuing from high school or trying something new. We are, of course, a Big Ten university. We have 20 Division I athletics teams. So lots of opportunity to get involved in that. If you want to go to football games, basketball games, all that fun stuff. Club and intramural sports are included in those 800 plus student organizations. So if you're interested in continuing a sport that you've been playing in high school, but maybe not at the Division I level, there is opportunity to do that as well. I mentioned a little bit the college town stuff when I was talking about DC. We do have Greek life on our campus as well, and community service and civic engagement will also fall under many of those student organizations. We have several community service-based student organizations on top of those service learning courses that I mentioned a few moments ago. All right, that's all the fun stuff. Let's talk about the application process for a couple of minutes here. If you are a rising senior, this is super relevant to you. And I will probably come to your school and reiterate it all again, but it's good to keep in mind now as we are sort of in mid-July as we approach the Common App opening in the next couple of weeks. So this is what the process is going to look like. When you apply, it is an online application. Hopefully you're relatively familiar with Common Application, but if you are not, Common Application is what we see most commonly. We do have two platforms you can use. You can use Common App or Apply Web. The vast majority of students choose Common App because they're applying to other schools on Common App as well, which is kind of the whole point of Common App. It does not make a difference which one you use. They are exactly the same application. They include the exact same things, but most students do choose Common App for sort of ease of use and things like that. But it does not matter at all. It's the exact same application. You will submit this online. It will open up in August. The exact date, I do not know. It's always a surprise to me, but it's usually relatively early in August, and you are welcome to apply as soon as it opens up. We'll talk about what the things that you need to apply. But more importantly are the deadlines. And we have the regular decision on here, and I don't even always have that on the slide because I'm going to tell you right now, and your CCNs will tell you the same thing. Everyone will reiterate this and shove it down your throat a million times. it is so, so, so important that if you are interested in attending the University of Maryland, that you apply to early action. That is a November 1st deadline. It is a deadline for all materials. So you have to have everything in by November 1st. It is early action. It is not early decision. So it is not a binding deadline. You are not required to come to the university if you apply early action. It is non-binding, but it's priority consideration for admission. So I really want to emphasize our admission, which is competitive as it is significantly more competitive if you wait until regular decision, to the point where we have students who would get admitted in like fairly simply in early action who get denied in regular decision, because that is how competitive the pool can be. And the vast majority of our students are applying in early action. So it really does you a lot of benefits to apply early action. There's no benefits at all to waiting until regular decision. So that November 1 deadline, it is November 1 every single year, whether you're a rising junior or a senior or a freshman or whatever. It is always a November 1st deadline. And it's very important that you consider that really the final deadline if you are interested in attending the university. Not only is that going to give you the best opportunity for admission, scholarships, and it is in fact the only consideration for merit scholarships. If you do not apply by early action, you could be the most perfect student in the entire world and have done something absolutely crazy. But if you don't apply by early action, you will not be considered for merit scholarships. We give away all of our merit scholarships to the early action pool. So if you don't apply by then, you are not eligible to be considered for one. So that's super, super, super important. The other benefit that's just kind of nice to have is that you get a decision back by the end of January. So by February 1st, you will have a decision about whether or not you are admitted to the University of Maryland. And that gives you the entirety of the spring semester to weigh your options, to visit campus as an admitted student, to look over your financial aid and all of those sorts of things, and decide whether or not you are going to attend the university. Regular decision is regular decision. You shouldn't even need to pay attention to that because you don't get consideration for anything else, and you should apply by November 1st. There's quite literally no reason not to. I cannot emphasize enough how important it is to apply by that November 1st deadline. All right, so this is what we actually have to have from you to complete by that deadline. So the application form and fee, it's an $80 fee. That is Common App itself. So that is the application form. Now, some of the other things that are on this are sort of built into Common App, but I'm going to go over them all individually anyway. One of the things that is not built into Common App, sort of, is your letters of recommendation. We require one teacher letter and one counselor letter. If you're a rising senior, hopefully you at this point already know who you intend to ask if you haven't already asked your letters of recommendation from, but we need one teacher and one counselor. You cannot sub the counselor out for a teacher. It has to be one teacher and one counselor. If you'd like to submit an additional letter of recommendation, if you have a coach or a mentor or somebody else that you think has an important perspective on you, you are welcome to submit an additional letter of recommendation, but it cannot replace one of those teachers or counselors. I do ask that you also be reasonable in submitting additional letters of recommendation. It does not benefit you to submit 17 letters of recommendation because at the end of the day, you're looking for quality over quantity. With these, doing the minimum in this case, so one teacher and one counselor, is perfectly acceptable and mildly encouraged. I would say you should only consider doing additional letters of recommendation if you feel there is a second teacher or somebody else that you have, like a boss, a mentor, a coach, somebody like that, who you think has a different perspective than your teacher. That might be important for us to know. That might be an additional letter that you might want to consider, but anything, the minimum required is that one teacher, one counselor. Official high school transcripts is probably the most important thing. Your high school should have a mechanism by which you request this. I strongly recommend that you now look at what that mechanism is and what the timeline is for that, because you are responsible for making sure you request those transcripts with enough time for them to get to us by the deadline. So make sure that you know what that process is, know what you have to do, know what you have to submit and things like that in order to get those transcripts on time. If you have any college transcripts, So you've taken a dual enrollment course that's not going to appear on your high school transcript, or you've taken a summer class, or you have taken done a summer program at a college. Basically, the safe thing to think about is if you have generated a transcript from ninth grade to when you are applying, you should plan on submitting that to us. We will require all official transcripts that you have generated from high school or from college. So if you have transferred high schools, we might also need both high school transcripts. So that's something to think about as well. If you are not sure, one, if you don't want to ask, err on the side of submitting everything, but you are also always welcome to reach out to us. I'll have our email at the end of the presentation. If you're not sure whether we need a specific transcript, it's better to ask than to be incomplete. Okay, next up is standardized test scores. We are for the class of 2027 or through the class of 2027. So that will be those of you who are rising to seniors. We are test optional. So that means it is up to you whether you want to submit your SAT or ACT scores. Our middle 50% for the SAT is about a 1440 to a 1540. So it's quite high. Less than 50% of our applicants submit test scores. So it is not to your detriment to not submit test scores. It doesn't hurt you if you don't submit them. People don't believe me when I say this, but I will tell you from my experience of reading applications throughout my career, I have never once read an application that did not include a test score and thought to myself, I wish this student submitted a test score. I have done the reverse, where I have been reading an application and wish the student hadn't submitted a test score. So I will put that out there for you to think about. At the end of the day, it is up to you whether you feel that your test score is an important aspect and is going to enhance your application. Please do not come up to me and ask me, this is my SAT score, should I submit it? I'm going to tell you exactly what I just said. I can't tell you whether or not that you should submit a score, but I can give you the middle 50%, which once again is a 1440 to a 1540. And I can tell you that it doesn't hurt you to not submit your score. And that is what I will repeat if you ask me whether you should submit your score. If English is not your first language or you're an international student, you may be required to submit an English proficiency test. That will be Duolingo, IELTS, or TOEFL. If you are not sure if this applies to you, please reach out to us and ask. But generally speaking, it's a smaller group of folks. But if you are not sure if this might apply for you, again, better to ask than to be incomplete. The activities list and resume are built into the application itself. So on that application, there is an activity section that you can use to tell us everything that you've been up to. College applications are not the place to be humble. They are, in fact, the place to brag. Everything that you have been doing throughout high school, we would like to know about. We like to know what your accomplishments are, what kinds of things you're doing to spend your time in, and all those sorts of things. The general Common App essay is what we are using for our essay section. It is required, so you do have to write the general Common App essay. It is not UMD specific. It does not need to be UMD specific. In fact, I would recommend that it is really about you, not about UMD or about anybody else. It is a personal essay. The university also has a couple of additional supplemental questions. They are not supplemental essays. They are short answer questions. They're meant to be a sentence, maybe two. They are not very many words. It's like 600 character limit. So they're meant to be quite short, and they are complete sentences. Sometimes students get a little bit caught up on these. They overthink them a little bit, I think. Do not overthink them. They are straightforward. They are not trick questions. There is no right or wrong answers for these. They are things along the lines of, if you could go anywhere in the world, where would you go? There is no wrong answer to that. We're just trying to get a little bit of sense of you as a person, a little bit of sense of your personality. I sometimes refer to them as vibe checks. They are not, there's no right answers. There's no wrong answers. It's just an additional sort of avenue for us to get a sense of you as a person.
Katja,
right.
Someone's asking about the middle ACT. Can you just give that quickly while you're on this subject?
Yeah, it's a 32 to a 36. Okay, last thing on this slide here is the TERPS application portal, or I mentioned acronyms earlier, we call it TAP. This will tell you what we have received and what we have not received. So it will tell you if we have a letter of recommendation. It will tell you if we have your transcripts. What I will tell you about this is, unfortunately, it is an old system. I would love for it to not be an old system. It is not up to me. And because it is an old system, it is not an instantaneous system. It doesn't update the instant we receive your document. it takes 7 to 10 business days, so that's 2 weeks essentially, for something to show up on your portal once we get it. So that means, one, if you submitted something the same day, do not be alarmed if you do not see it on your portal the next day or even the day after that. It is normal and not any cause for alarm for it to not appear on your portal like within a day or two. The other thing is, because the deadline is November 1st and you need to have everything submitted and be complete by November 1st, so that means everything on this list we have to have by that date. And because it takes 2 weeks to show up for the portal on the portal, I very, 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 very strongly recommend that you do not wait until Halloween to apply and to submit all your documents, because you will not know if something goes wrong. And occasionally the internet the likes to eat documents. It doesn't happen often, but on occasion something will get lost. Somebody will make a typo in an email address. Something can go awry. And if we don't receive a document, and you don't know that we haven't received a document, there's not a whole lot we can do about that if we don't know about it. So it is very important, and my strong recommendation, that you make sure you have submitted everything prior to 2 weeks before the deadline, so that you have time to know if something has gone wrong. If we didn't receive something, or if we still require something from you, or you thought somebody sent something in and they didn't, that you have enough time before the deadline to become aware of that and then problem solve it. We can't help you if we don't know about it, and if you don't know about it, you can't ask us to help you. So we will figure it out, but we have to know before the deadline. Another thing to keep in mind before the deadline where standardized test scores are concerned is that does official scores. So that means if you are taking an SAT in the middle of October, you should not be banking on that score getting to us by November 1st. My recommendation is that if you should have a score on hand that you are comfortable sharing with us if you are choosing not to be test optional when you apply. So that means as you are filling out the Common App and asking you if you're planning to submit your scores, if you don't have a score at that point that you feel good about sending us, you should answer that question no. You should not bank on a score that you haven't received yet, is my advice on that. You cannot change your test optional status after the deadline. So if you are taking an October one and you don't get the score that you thought and you want to change your mind, if it's November 5th, nothing we can do about it at that point. We require a score. So important for you to sort of keep all that deadline in the back of your mind when you're talking about the timeline for submitting all these things. And that means, if you're having letters of recommendation, give those folks plenty of time to write and submit them. It's not very fair to ask a teacher for a letter of recommendation 2 days before the deadline and expect them to drop everything and write that letter of recommendation for you. So make sure you're getting all your requests in on time and all that stuff so that you set yourself up to have everything in by the deadline. Because not making the deadline is a pretty poor reason to, not get admitted or not get a scholarship or anything like that. Okay. There are 23 factors that we will consider. They are all on the board right here. You can find this list online. If you Google UMD admission factors, it will come right up. This is publicly available on our website. This is, importantly, not a checklist. We are not going down this list with every application and checking boxes. Not everything will apply to everyone. So, for example, as of right now, as far as I know, Montgomery County is still not ranking students. So rank in class would not apply to you. That does not hurt you. It's just something one less thing that we will consider for you within this. Again, SAT score is optional. So if you submit them, we consider them. If you don't, we won't. This is all stuff that we will look at. That being said, we are an academic institution. At the end of the day, the most important things are your academics. We are looking for strong students who are performing well academically. Competitive students transcripts are gonna look like mostly A's, close to straight A's, maybe a B in sort of a semester or something like that, in the most rigorous courses that are available to them at their high school. So this is all evaluated within the context of your own high school. So what is offered to you at your high school? What are the resources at your high school? And that sort of stuff is all taken into consideration of what courses you're taking and how well you're doing in those courses. That stuff is the most important. The rest of this stuff helps us understand, sort of why your transcript might look the way it does. If you have dips in your transcript or if there's something anomalous, the rest of this stuff can help us understand and, not ignore dips, but contextualize them to understand why a transcript might look the way it does. I want to point out a couple of things that are not on this list. One is AP exam scores. So we will not consider your AP exam scores in the admission process. You can use AP exam scores for college credit, but that is only something to worry about after you've been admitted. Please do not send us your AP scores. We will not look at them. I actually don't even know how I could look at them because we don't consider your AP exam scores. So that's one thing. Another thing is legacy status. We do not consider legacy status in admission. So that's something to keep in mind. And the final thing is demonstrated interest. We have way too many students and way too many applicants to consider demonstrated interest. We get over 70,000 applications every year. So while I very much encourage you to reach out to us if you have genuine questions or concerns about your application, do not feel like you need to reach out to us just so that we know you exist. Or just because somebody told you that it's important that your admissions counselor knows who you are. While I am happy to talk to you and sort of answer any questions that you have or talk through some things that you might be confused about, I do not necessarily read your application. And so me knowing who you are does not really matter in any sort of capacity. So we do not consider that demonstrated interest. I do strongly encourage you, especially because you are in Montgomery County and you're relatively close, I do strongly encourage you to visit campus because I think that's a valuable experience for you to, one, have the opportunity to speak to current students, but also to see campus and to have an idea if you actually want to spend your next 4 years here. But that's really an opportunity for you to take advantage of, sort of discovering campus, not so much for us. We're not keeping track of who visited campus and who didn't. So all these things we consider. If it's not on here, we don't consider it. Okay. I like to talk through what your possible admissions decision can be really quickly before we wrap things up and I answer some questions. There are 3 possible decisions that you can receive. You can be admitted to there are 2 sort of admissions decisions and then one denied decision. So denied decision is relatively self-explanatory. We are not offering you a spot in the class. But there are 2 admissions decisions. We do a fall admission, which is your standard, what you would think of as being admitted, right? You're going to come and start in the fall semester and da-da-da-da. We also offer a spring admission. And so I think people get a little bit caught up and confused about spring admission. So I'll talk about it pretty briefly here. But basically, our issue with the spring or sort of with the fall semester is classroom space. And class availability. So there's only so many sort of spots in classes because majors and the university as a whole wants to keep our classrooms reasonable, and our student faculty ratio is 18:1, and we are very happy with that. And we want to keep it like that. There is a limit to how many spots, like sort of seats in classrooms we have in the fall semester. And so because of that, we then offer some additionally qualified students to be able to start in the spring semester. So that would be if you are, for example, in the class of 2027, instead of starting in the fall of 2027, you'd be starting in January of 2028. And there are a couple of options if you are offered spring admission. You can just start in January 2028. You can take classes somewhere else in the fall and then come in. You can do whatever you want for the fall. We don't have any restrictions on what you can do in that fall. Or you can participate in the Freshman Connection program. And our Freshman Connection program is basically allows you to come to campus, live on campus, and take courses. Those courses are just at off-peak hours. So, and there's a slightly less, you don't have access to every course in the course catalog. It's a specific selection of courses that are general education requirements and gateway requirements for majors. So that Freshman Connection courses are held from 3 to 9 p.m. on Monday through Thursday, and then all day on Fridays. So that is an option for those who are admitted to the spring semester if they want to come to campus in the fall and participate in that. They can live on campus. They can live with non-Freshman Connection students if they have somebody else. They can participate in student organizations. They can go to sports games. They have access to all the facilities. The only difference is that class time, which is in the evenings or on Fridays. So that's the deal with spring. Let's talk really quickly about this. Apologies, I did not update this slide. The FAFSA should become available in October, which will be the basis for need-based financial aid. The deadline is March 1st for priority decisions on that. This is a separate office. If you have financial aid questions, I will not be able to answer those for you today. I do not want to, sort of get anything wrong where that is concerned, and that is not my area of expertise. But if you do have financial aid questions, please reach out to our financial aid office. I can provide the email for you if you need it. But that's on that. Merit-based scholarships, I did talk about a little bit already. The early action applications are the automatic consideration. If you don't apply early action, you are not considered for those merit scholarships. The only other thing to keep in mind where merit scholarships are concerned is while our entire admission is holistic, we use all those factors. Merit-based scholarships are not. They are based purely on academic merit. They're based purely on your GPA and your course rigor, SATs if you submitted them. But they are not, we don't consider extracurriculars or anything like that when we are considering merit-based scholarships. It's academic performance only. And they are competitive. It's usually about the top 15-ish, give or take a little bit, percent of the admitted student class that is being offered merit scholarships. So something to keep in mind there. I think that is the end of everything I have. Yes. So if you are interested, if you do have follow-up questions or anything like that that I don't get to in the next 14 minutes, you can join our mailing list, follow us on social media, or the email is applymaryland@umd.edu. I want to emphasize you are emailing me by emailing Apply Maryland. The reason that we do it all through a central email is one, because it links us right to your student profile, so I can find very quickly if you're asking me if you're missing documents. But also because sometimes, like I mentioned, I am one of several people who covers Montgomery County, and I may not be your counselor. If you attend Bethesda Chevy Chase, I am your counselor, but if you attend a different high school, I may or may not be. And so that way, if you're not sure who your counselor is, if you email Apply Maryland, we can make sure it ends up to the right person. Or if you're asking a super specialized question that maybe I know a little bit about, but I'm not the expert on, I can pass it along to the person who might be able to answer your question the best. So if you do have additional questions, you need to reach out. applymaryland@umd.edu is the way to get in touch with us. Okay. Now we can do questions. I'm going to stop screen sharing so that I can see the chat a little bit easier. But we have, just over 10 minutes now to answer some questions. All right, let me get into the chat here.
So we have been answering a lot of these questions, which
Awesome.
you will see. So I'm just looking to see what hasn't. How do we visit campus? Go onto the UMD website, go into the little search and say campus visit, and you can schedule one. Average weighted GPA, you don't usually tell us that.
No, the reason I don't think that, and I can talk a little bit why we don't do that. Partially it's because we're not recalculating every single GPA. So all the different GPAs at all the different schools, yes, they are standardized in Montgomery County, but it's a weighted GPA is not super helpful because all the high schools weight them differently. So it's really skewed. It can be really skewed. It's not super applicable to like the 5-point scale necessarily. So it's not super, super helpful, generally speaking.
Can you talk a little bit about how UMD views dual enrollment and how that plays into your review?
Yeah, absolutely. So we review dual enrollment as rigorous coursework, right? So for basically we're looking for, when I mentioned earlier, competitive students to be taking the most rigorous coursework that's available to them. So for many students, that might be AP coursework, that might be IB coursework, or it might be dual enrollment coursework. So we do view that as, sort of maximum rigor coursework that students can be taking. You can bring in college credits. Certainly, that is, sort of valuable. You can get college credit from AP and IB as well, but certainly you can be bringing in general education requirements or all those sorts of things like that. Where dual enrollment is concerned. Yeah, absolutely.
Zach has his hand up. Do you want to come off mute or put it in the chat?
Yeah, I'll just say here. So like with the letters of college recommendations, like my coach is a teacher there, but if he wasn't my actual teacher, but he knows of my coursework, can I use that as a letter of recommendation, or does it have to be a teacher that I had like on my transcript?
It should be a teacher that you had in class. Your coach, if they know you really well, could submit absolutely an additional letter of recommendation, but I would strongly recommend that you use a teacher who had you in class.
Okay, thank you.
And Nukunja, you also have your hand up?
Hi. So let's say a student is in dual enrollment. Would they rather get a letter of recommendation from their high school counselor or their uh, dual enrollment counselor?
Mhm. It should be their high school counselor. That's generally what we prefer. That being said, if it's because you don't necessarily have the same kind of counselor with dual enrollment, but if it is like the program manager or something like that, like we're not going to call you incomplete for that, but it really should be your high school counselor.
Thank you. All right, somebody, and again, I think this is one that you're not going to answer. Do in-state students have an edge over out of state, or what percentage of your class is from in-state?
I mentioned this at the beginning, but it's okay if you missed it. We are
Sorry.
about 70% in-state students. So that is the percentage of our class. And that is what we keep it. That is what we keep. So as of right now, we have to keep it at 70-30. So as of right now, our application numbers are so that about 70% of our applicants come from in-state and 30% out of state. So that means currently it's roughly the same for in-state and out-of-state students. That can change if, for example, our out-of-state numbers like went up a lot. And so then those numbers weren't 70-30, then that might change a little bit. But generally speaking, it's roughly the same at the moment because of the way our application numbers break down.
Thank you. Hillary, do you want to come off mute?
Yeah, hi. What is around the average amount of AP courses an admitted student takes during their high school career?
That is not really a question I can answer because it so varies on school, because different schools will like offer different amounts. So it really depends on your individual school. We don't keep that data as well. I'm not sure we're calculating that anywhere, so I'm not sure. But generally speaking, like there are some schools, for example, that you don't see this so much in Montgomery County or anywhere, but there are schools elsewhere that maybe only offer 3 AP courses. So a student who takes 3 AP courses, if that's all that's offered, would be considered differently than a student who has 30 AP courses and only took 3, if that makes sense. So there's not like a certain number that's like the admitted.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I'm looking at the chat.
Somebody asked about the supplemental questions, if they're
Oh,
the
yes.
same as last year and this year. They should be roughly the same. They might be tweaked a little bit, but the supplemental questions will by and large be the same general. The wording might be tweaked a little bit, or for example, there's a question every year of what did you do last insert day of the week here. That day of the week always changes, so that will be different, but roughly they will be the same.
Thank you.
There's not a deadline for campus visits.
KS, do you have a question?
Yes, hi, thank you. Excuse me, does University of Maryland offer deferral, like if a player, if a student gets accepted, but is not able to attend, like, start admission the same year, is deferral available?
Yes, you can apply for deferral. It is an application, so it does have to be approved, and they are approved on a case-by-case basis. But we will offer a deferral. It's important to keep in mind when you're doing a deferral, it is always a full year. So it's always the same term. So if you were admitted for the fall, you can defer for a year to the following fall, or like if you were admitted to the spring, you can defer a year to the following spring. But you can apply for.
Thank you.
Deferral,
And actually, since I'm asking, I asked in the chat, but for the rigor of the classes, like if a student has abbreviated schedule due like to internship or high level athletics and things like that, does it affect them? Like he has AP classes, but he's not taking the full, let's say 7 classes course load, but only like 3 or 4.
Yeah, so that's what the holistic process is for, right? Is so that we can take that other consideration into effect, right? If he's playing high level sports or he's playing, doing an internship during the school year or something like that, that's what the holistic process is for, so that we can consider all of that.
Fantastic. And the last question, somebody asked about Seal of Bell literacy. Does it count someplace on the application? Like, is there a place on the application, or does it count anywhere as far as admissions go?
There is a place that you can put it on the application, yes, and we'll look at it.
Thank you very much.
Vidya?
Yeah, this is for my child actually. The question is on the BSMD pathway in the sophomore year of the college. So for that pathway, the application right now, should that be undecided major, or do we need to apply using one of the majors?
That pathway is for specific majors. So if you're interested in pursuing that pathway, it should be with one of the specific majors for that program.
So the application should be made with that program and not undecided at the present time.
Yeah.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions that are for the good of the whole group? If you have specific questions that are unique to you, I suggest you follow up with your CCN. I thought I had another question on here, but it doesn't look as if I do. Okay, anything else in the chat?
Yes, hi. I had a question about does University of Maryland take into consideration that our MCPS students often have two different teachers because the master's schedule changes semester wide, and so that they're like learning progression, any content or relationship developing with teachers to potentially get to the GPA or letter grade difference doesn't have a full year to like arc of the year to develop. Is that something that UMD takes into consideration for MCPS students that might be different from other Maryland students?
You mean that they have a different teacher with different sections of the course?
Yeah, it's like a full year course, like a AP physics course,
Mhm.
or an algebra 2 or calculus course, but they actually take 2 semester
Mhm.
courses versus a full year course, which is very different from any other school system in the country.
Yeah, so it's not unique. That happens other places as well. But we do take that into consideration. So we get what's something called a school report, and that's part of what the council letter of recommendation is for as well, is to give us information like that, so that we have anything that's unique to the district or to the school, so things like that. But yes, we'll take that into consideration.
Oh, Miss Heald put something in the chat that's really important. I just want to reiterate, everyone might not have seen it. UMD does not consider any senior grades. Your grades at the end of the junior year are your grades. So some students say, oh, should I wait and apply regular to count my first semester? No. In MCPS, first semester grades are not available until mid-February. So this is too late. And a lot of kids come and tell me to send their first semester senior grades, and no, UMD does not accept them or evaluate them.
That's a really great point, for sure. I do see that every year as well, where students are like, oh, I want to wait for my first semester grades. Please, please, please do not do that. We, again, do not accept those senior year grades, and they don't come in time for us to review them for regular decision in any case. So you really are not benefiting yourself if you are waiting until regular decision for that reason. Okay.
Katja, can you talk a little bit quickly? I know we don't have much time. Students who transfer to Maryland, what's the acceptance rate like? What if they want to do engineering as a transfer or a limited enrollment program?
Yeah, I will take that real quick. I'll take that real quickly as we wrap things up. But transfer students pathway is pretty straightforward. I don't know the acceptance rate off the top of my head because it varies quite a bit each semester, and because it depends on how many, sort of how much space we have. Really, transfer is really space available. So some semesters it's not quote unquote easy to get in, but it's like not super competitive, and then other semesters it's very competitive. Generally speaking, for transfer students, a 3.0 GPA or higher and having completed fundamental math and English, if you have 30 or more credits, is generally competitive for transfer students. But you do have to have 30 credits after high school. So it's important, if you've taken transcripts or if you've taken sort of dual enrollment courses in high school, those courses don't count towards that 30 credits after high school, where that is concerned. But for engineering or anything like that, there is specific sort of pathway information on the LEP website as well. But basically the gateways still apply. So you have to have taken and met the gateway requirements in order to be admitted to the major as a transfer student. I think that covered everything you said just now, Kate.
All right. So I think it's time to wrap up. Thank you so much for being here, Katja. Katja, as she said at the beginning, she will be visiting most, I'm not sure, of the schools in Montgomery County in the fall. I encourage you to attend those meetings. They're usually in our auditoriums because we have such a large attendance. This recording will be added to the workshop list, which I have dumped several times into the chat if you don't have that link. And if you have additional questions that are specific to you, please reach out to your college career navigator. If you don't know who that person is, check with your counselor and they will refer you to them. So thank you everybody so much for being here. Katja, a special thank you to you. I know you're a very busy person. Have a wonderful vacation and we will see you in the fall.
Thanks for having me, guys. I'll see most of you in the fall.